Hello, hello, and welcome to this very special conversation. Today, I'm so pleased to be with you all and to invite you to celebrate Women's Day. It is a big thing here in Italy, International's Women's Day. And as I was thinking yesterday about how I could gift you, my audience, I thought, what a wonderful gift it would be if I could introduce you to a woman who inspires me, a woman who I've been gifted myself by my own coach, and a woman who I see just really in the celebration of life, in the celebration of being here. And so I contacted Elsie yesterday, and I asked her if she would come on board this conversation today, where we would explore and converse and discuss why it's never too late to follow your dream. So Elsie, thank you so much for being here.
Well, it's my pleasure. I certainly celebrate Women's Day, and I celebrate every day pretty much. So I'm delighted that you invited me to do this and to get a chance to talk with you and just share this journey together.
It's lovely, yes. And I think that's the whole point for me. You know, you do strike me as a woman who's celebrating and enjoying her life. And I don't know if you recall, Elsie, but back in September when I was doing my apprenticeship with Michael, I stood up and asked you a question. And I remember I was in the audience and I was in this whole spinning and frantic fit yet again about, why it was so hard to feel at home in myself when it came to my relationship, my environment, where I was in the world. And I specifically remember that these thoughts were coming to me a lot about, am I in the right place? Am I with the right man? Am I doing the right thing? How come I feel so good when I'm, out of here? Why can't I bring that back to Italy with me? And I was really in this whole spinning element. And you said to me, after I blabbered on for a while, you said, you have a wonderful life. And it just struck such a chord with me. It really hit home for me with regards to really seeing that we can be at home anywhere, and that it's not about being in the right place at the right time in the right relationship with the right person. And I just think that from that moment there was such a deep connection between the two of us that I remember feeling like I need more of that woman in my life. I want to be around that woman more. And I would wake up, and the times I would hear myself criticizing myself, as we women do, I would wake up and I would think, Elsie said I have a wonderful life, So could we open up with that and just perhaps look at, what do you mean by a wonderful life, and how do you see us women having that?
Wow, that is such a deep topic. I'm going to start by saying, first of all, that when you shared what our conversation was like at Michael's class, and you repeated what I said, I didn't remember what I said. But when you said it just now, I felt that from you. It touched my heart again when you said that, because I could feel what that meant to you. And that to me is what we celebrate as women. I mean, as humans, but today, especially as women, is we really connect soul to soul. And to do that and to have a wonderful life, it's really about connecting to our our true nature, first of all. That's what happened to me. I didn't know anything about what I had inside. And all my life as a child and as a young woman, a young married woman who married at the age of 17 and had a child right away, I never felt worthy. I always felt insecure and as if there was something lacking in my life. And at the age of, 22, 23, I can remember contemplating suicide because I just felt so lost and just lost. And I remember thinking to myself, is this all there is to life? Is this all there is? By the age of 22, I had 2 children, and I was a stay-at-home mom and homemaker. And it's not that I had anything wrong in my life, that my husband was good. I'm still with the same man after 54 years and marrying young. I'm really pleased that we are still together and enjoying a quieter love than we had in the early days. But there's a connection between us that has grown over the years that I'm grateful for. And again, not without stops and starts and separation at one point, even as we were learning about the principles. And so what happened to me is that I had an insight about thought creates feeling. And that insight was transformative because not just the information that I had something to do with my feelings, because I always attributed my feelings to circumstances and to other people and was happy to blame that and them rather than take a look that I had any role in this part. But what that insight brought me was that it came from me. And so for the first time, I discovered that I was wonderful. I discovered I had something inside of me that I didn't know. And that was the first step to discovering that not only am I wonderful as a woman and as an undereducated woman who hadn't really worked until I was probably in my late 20s, and that I was worthy. That was startling to me and gave me confidence then to go out on my own and to feel whole in myself. Prior to that, I had such dependence on my husband and only felt comfortable when I was traveling with him. And I'm going to take a step back and say that oftentimes I wasn't comfortable even traveling with Ken because of that dependence. That I still felt insecure, but in my insecurity, it was good to have a man around. And then when I discovered the wonder of me as an individual, that confidence came out, and that confidence that I'm whole in myself.
Mm-hmm. Tell us more about that discovery, Elsie, because there'll be a lot of people here listening that have no idea what the 3 principles are, or even what the understanding relates to. So could you say a little bit more about what you saw and what it means?
Ken and I had the privilege of knowing Sydney Banks, who is considered the father of the 3 principles, because he was an uneducated welder and not looking for anything. He was not a seeker. He didn't know there was anything to find, but he just had this profound insight about 3 principles that underlie the human experience. And because we knew him and knew that he had been a relatively insecure and unhappy person in his marriage and as a father and in his, as a tradesman. And then we saw this transformation in this unhappy man where his whole being changed. And the way he spoke and enjoyed life was so different. And long story short, what he uncovered, these three principles that underlie the human experience, have become known as three principles, and they are considered a new paradigm in the fields of psychology and psychiatry. And what this new paradigm points to is that we are whole. We don't have to be fixed. And I was brought up believing I had to be fixed, right? Because I was insecure, I was unhappy, so there was something wrong with me. And to see what had happened to Sydney Banks, that he became happy and secure and drew people to him by the warmth of his love and understanding, was on one hand extraordinary to witness, and on the other hand was really disconcerting to Ken and I. Because how does this happen? It was like this fairy tale come to life. And I was not a believer in fairy tales. I was a believer in practical things in life. You know, show me the proof. So the proof was before my eyes, but I liked it. I was warmed by the feeling that Sid walked in, but it also disturbed me because I didn't have that. So again, to move forward in the journey, I fought his love and understanding for a year and a half. And I got angrier and angrier and challenged him more and more of the time. He would talk occasionally to us about thought, because there was something about thought that intrigued me. And despite myself and my resistance, I would ask him to say something about thought. I'd bring up another visit that they had had with Ken and I, and he'd start to respond, and I'd get angry with him again. It's like, how dare you? I asked you not to talk to me about this nonsense, and you keep talking to me. And what really bothered me is he wouldn't be irritated by my challenges. He would twinkle at me. And this was very disturbing to me. I mean, how dare he twinkle at me and not get angry? Because I was just in the full heat of my rage, and he would twinkle, you know? And so one day, at the height of my resistance and anger, when I basically hid from them, and then finally when I was compelled to invite them into our home, I ultimately kind of turned my back on them and shooed them out of the house, because their presence of happiness and wholeness was too disconcerting to me. And after they left, in the midst of this anger, I had an insight about thought, and that thought creates feeling. Now, I want you to understand that this happened 43, 44 years ago, right? I'm an oldie, but a goodie. And that was so profound to me, because in those days, there was really no consideration about thought and the role it played psychologically in creating our reality. That was, barely touched 44 years ago. And it's not that I had any background as a psychologist, or I wasn't involved in social services or anything. I was still a homemaker and a housewife. But there was something that tickled me inside, that tickled my true nature, is what I call it, that innate wisdom that we all have within us. And that's what came out in response. In the midst of this anger, this insight came out from within me. And I knew with that insight that it had nothing to do with Sid. It had nothing to do with my external circumstances, that aha moment came completely from within me, and what we call innate wisdom. That is not conditional, that has nothing to do with our education or lack of, that has nothing to do with our standing in the community or our socioeconomic standing in the world. It's a natural, how can I say this? It's a natural gift that we're born with, that we're all born with innate wisdom. And that's how I found a wonderful life.
Yeah. Well, I think there's so much hope in you sharing that you were able to come to that wisdom and hear that even in the midst of anger, because I think for many of us, we can fall into the trap of thinking we have to be in a certain state of mind in order to understand things, in order to access our wisdom. We need to go and meditate on a hill for 3 days, or we need to move to Tibet. But here you are accessing your wisdom in the midst of anger. And, and my own example of really hearing wisdom for the first time goes back to being 11 years old. And I grew up in Northern Ireland during a very troubled period in that part of the world. And I find myself in a dangerous situation. It could have been a more dangerous situation, but even though I was very afraid, and like I hear you were very angry, Elsie, it came to me what to say, and it diffused the situation. So there's something so powerful here for women to remember that, our wisdom is accessible even in the most difficult, sometimes life-threatening circumstances or angry circumstances. I think there's a lot of hope in that, Elsie.
Yes, yes. And I think to this day, one of the things that continues to refresh me and revitalize me is that it's never too late to dream. I had the opportunity of traveling with my daughter and her partner a couple of years ago to go to Bali and Lombok. And Ken was invited, Lynn invited her dad, but he wasn't into traveling. And it was for a time period of 6 to 7 weeks. And she and her partner had decided that they wanted to leave their jobs because they felt sort of where I had been when I was, 22, 23 years old. Is this all there is? And they decided to leave their jobs. They had a nice nest egg from selling their condo and whatnot, given plenty of advance notice to their employers. And they decided they were going to take a year off and explore Southeast Asia. And even before they left, they said, would you two ever consider hooking up with us at some point in our travels? And I thought, well, Southeast Asia doesn't really appeal to me. I've never been drawn to that, although I love to travel. But after a couple of days, what occurred to me is it wasn't about where they had invited us to meet with them. It was the invitation to meet with them that was important. And that kind of turned me around, and I ended up saying to them, wherever you are, I'll come. I would love to hook up with you, and it'll be an adventure. And so that was transformative to me, and that would have been, I was 69. So that was a real new learning for me, that it's like, my God, my daughter wants to be with me. Her partner wants to be with me. What a privilege that they want to be with me and Ken at this stage of their lives. Ken wasn't into it. And at one point, that would have stopped me from going. And I will admit, I sat with it. And I talked to Ken, and he said, I'd go for it, hon. Just go for it. You don't need me along. And I came to the truth of that I didn't need him along. I whole in myself. And the possibility, this dream of going to Bali and Lombok, because that's where, we ended up hooking up, was amazing. That 7 weeks that I spent with them was one of the best times of my life. I loved every moment. I turned 70 when I was in Estepona, because we ended up going then from Lombok to Spain, and we stayed there another couple of weeks. I just felt blessed to have that time with them. The only time I went down really in that 7 weeks was for the first time in 52 years of marriage. I missed our anniversary. And I woke up on the day of our anniversary at the end of August, and I just was really low. And I was going to have a Skype session with Ken later on that evening to celebrate our anniversary online. And I couldn't get out of my low state of mind. And I said to the girls, I said, okay, just leave Mama alone. You know, I just need quiet to myself today. And just, if you don't mind going away somewhere and just leaving me in my misery. And they said, okay, off they went. And I just wallowed in my misery that day, had the call with Ken. Everything went wrong with our internet connection. It was the worst it could possibly be. And when I was able to talk with him, I felt shy. I mean, how can you feel shy with a man after 52, 53 years of knowing him? But I could hardly look at his face on the screen. It's like I didn't know where to look. We couldn't connect. I just couldn't feel a connection with him. So after 15 minutes of no connection, you know, almost figuratively and literally, I said to the girls, okay, you know, come and speak with Papa. And I went out on the patio. They're laughing and they're having the best time with their dad. And I thought, this is so unfair. You know, I'm supposed to be talking with my man and I don't have a connection with him. And the girls are having the time of their life. And I'm sitting there in even more misery. And finally, Lynn, our daughter, comes out to the patio and says, Mom, Dad wants to finish the call with you. And oh my word, I just was overcome with emotion and with love that after all these years of marriage, my man wanted to end the call with me, really. And I raced across the room to get on the line with Ken. And I said to him, you know, hon, that was the nicest gift you could give me, is that you wanted to end the call with me. And it just was beautiful, you know, because to him, that meant a lot, that I recognized his, you know, his wanting to end the call with me. And it was a really beautiful, beautiful moment. So I share that with you in terms of our connection, and after all these years, how you can still go in and out of connection with somebody, whether it's, you know, any family member or longtime friend. But also the wholeness I felt in that journey. You know, that I didn't miss Ken while I was away because I felt him close to me. Because that's what I've discovered. Like when we feel whole in ourselves, what's there to miss?
Yeah. And tell us how you see that relating, Elsie, to following your dream, you know, in relation to perhaps career or starting a business, especially if perhaps you're at a later stage in life, or perhaps you're not 20 something and starting out for the first time. Like, can you speak to that? Because I loved how you described following your dream, you know, of going to Southeast Asia. What would you say to those women?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I was a stay-at-home mom, and I worked very briefly at a credit union for about a year when my children were small, but I really missed being at home with them and just felt I wanted to be at home with them. So I didn't start a career per se until I was in my 30s. And what started my career was my first insight, where after that, it wasn't that I felt I had anything to offer, it's just that I found steadiness and confidence in myself. And Sid saw that more than I did. And so at one point, he invited me to travel with him when he was invited to talk at universities or mental health conferences and that kind of thing to share this new paradigm in the fields of psychology and psychiatry. And I will say I was terrified because even though I had found confidence, I didn't have the confidence to talk to audiences, like to talk one-on-one or with a small group of women, in a small gathering was one thing, but to talk at a mental health conference where there were maybe 80 or 90 or 100 people was just beyond me. I mean, that scared the living daylights out of me. And so the first time Sid invited me to talk at a conference at the in Eugene, Oregon, when I was with him, his presence helped me feel safe. But when it came time for me to go on the stage and talk, I felt frozen with fear. And I remember Sid saying to me beforehand, just kind of patting me on the shoulder and saying, "Dearie, you'll be okay. Just talk what you know." Well, the only thing I knew in this new paradigm that was real for me was thought creates feeling. So I just started to blab for a few minutes because I had nothing came to mind. But then it came through me again, this innate wisdom, this innate strength that we all have came through me, and the words of my first insight came out. I found a way to be happy. I've learned that thought creates feeling. And all of a sudden, I just felt myself at home. I felt myself at home in this wholeness of who we are. And that started my career. And for a while, I will admit again that it was due to Sid because I had the honor of traveling with him, and that established a degree, a foundation of credibility. But then at one point when Dr. George Pransky and Dr. Roger Mills, who were considered the leaders in psychology at that point in terms of introducing this new paradigm, invited Sid to go to San Francisco to talk at Berkeley. And Sid said, "No, this time take Elsie." And they're going, "Oh, well, gee, Sid, no, we want the man." And I'm sitting listening to this going, "Oh, Lord, Lord help me." And I was scared. Again, I was really scared, but the doctors had no choice but to agree. And I went. First time I flew on my own. I'd never flown in a plane on my own. I'd flown with Sid. And even that was unnerving. But for the first time, I got on the plane on my own and I was okay. Again, it was discovering my wholeness and my confidence. I got to the hotel. I checked in and I thought, this is cool. I can do this. I can travel on my own. I thought, well, now I need to step out of the hotel and, find my way and walk around, just to kind of keep reaching out and gaining more courage in being okay with where I was and on my own. And so it was step by step that I did that. And then again, in that seminar, I was challenged. I remember talking a good deal about unconditional love and what that means in terms of relationships and career and wholeness and security. And there was a man in the audience that stood up and told me to shut up and sit down. And I just was taken so aback by him saying that and several of his colleagues standing up and applauding that I was speechless. And again, and to me, I want to stress this, that like what you said, Grace, that when you were 11 years old, in the midst of dangerous circumstances, something came out of you that diffused the situation. Mm-hmm. I was speechless. The personal Elsie was speechless. In that speechlessness came out the phrase, is this the feeling you want? Because the feeling went from a really beautiful feeling in the room and it went down the tube. And there was just this feeling of negativity and like, what's that man saying? Why are they applauding? Poor Elsie. And when I said what came out of me without thought, is this the feeling you want? And my voice shook. And then I rushed off the stage. And I ran down the hallway, tears coming down, met Sid, and he said, what happened, dearie? And I told him, and he said, oh, I'll fix it after lunch, not to worry. And I thought, okay, he's going to come back in after lunch and he's going to give him what for? He's going to really pull him off. Well, he didn't do that. He came in after lunch and he just spoke from his heart and soul and unconditional love. And that settled everybody down. And the men that had applauded and confronted me were there and they stayed there. I couldn't come out of my insecurity for a couple of weeks after that. And people said to me during that time, the people that were at that seminar said to me, Elsie, that taught me so much about the feeling level of our engagement in work relationships, in personal relationships. And that's what I've held on to, is that even when I really moved out on my own in my career in my mid-30s and had to stand on my own 2 feet, it's been the level of my mental health that has drawn people in as clients. It's not what I say, it's what I feel. Just as when you first started talking, Grace, and you mentioned our conversation at Michael's class, I felt you. I felt the heart and soul of you. And I know that's what draws women and men to you in your work. And I would say that the women that are on this call or listen to this call later, that's what draws people to you. Whether you recognize it fully or not, it's your own level of well-being and your trust in that will bring more and more people to you because they want what you have.
Wow, beautiful, Elsie. There's so much comfort in that, as I hear you speak, there's so much comfort. And, in today's world where we're simply being bombarded with the fact that, you need more information, you need to know more, you need to do this, you need to do that. There's so much noise out there telling not just women, but all of us what's wrong with us and what we need to do to fix it, be it our business, our career, our body, our image, whatever. Obviously I have a special connection to women because we see a lot of information in terms of how we should look and where we should be by now, and I don't know, lots of society says comes up. And so when I hear you speak, Elsie, yet again, that comfort, that truth rises up, that hopefulness. And then that's really what I wanted to gift everyone today, that the feeling, that's what you called it, the feeling. And for us as women to recognize that is enough, like that's more than enough. And everything else is wonderful, but being in the feeling with another person and having that feeling within ourselves and awakening that amongst our clients and friends and family, it's just so underestimated, I think. So thank you so much for really bringing that forward, Elsie. to finish, I guess I would just ask, have you anything else you'd like to say on the topic of never too late to follow your dreams? Is there anything else that comes to mind for women listening that maybe they feel that maybe that, you know, it is too late for them, or they don't have the technical know-how, or they don't have the appearance or the age or the savvy, you know, what would you say to them, those that have a dream in their heart?
I would just listen to it. Like when opportunity presents itself to you in one way or another, you never get opportunity presented to you unless you're ready. And oftentimes opportunity will come our way and we'll think, oh, I'm not ready for this. This is too big or too much, or I'm not ready. I encourage you to just rest with it. You know, don't turn anything down. Just rest with it. Be okay with not knowing. Like sometimes not knowing is a gift. When we get a present, we don't know what's in it, but it's not alarming not to know what's in the gift. We just see it as a gift. And I encourage you to consider the unknown in that way. So if we don't really know whether we should or shouldn't, or, you know, just rest with it. And then follow your heart, follow your dreams. I have an opportunity, and I've taken it, to go to Norway to do some work there in May. And again, you know, it was like, you know, do I really want to travel at my age? Now I'm 71, and I've got aches and pains. And then the next morning I woke up and I thought, what's up with that? Why would you not consider that opportunity? And because I was betwixt and between, you know, between my personal thinking and wisdom saying, here's an opportunity. Don't just turn it away. Rest with it. I rested with it, and I'm going. Now, one of the things that I used to really want was for Ken to travel with me on business. And I learned about, 15 years ago that the more I nagged him to do that, the more he turned away. Funny that. You know? And then finally, he did agree to go with me to do a retreat for couples in Switzerland. And we had a good time. But then when we got home, he said, okay, now just leave me alone. You know, I enjoyed it, but that's not me. And I got it. And so ever since then, I have found freedom and complete enjoyment on traveling on my own. And so I have followed my dream in that, which I never thought I'd get the opportunity to do, although I will say that Sid said to me, even when I was resistant to his sharing what he had learned, if you hear this, Elsie, he said, you'll travel the world. And I thought, oh, Sid, that's such nonsense, you know, total nonsense. But I am. And I just am loving it. I'm comfortable. I'm grateful. And just, you know, look at life with new eyes and see who you are on the inside. And just go for it, ladies.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Thank you, Grace. Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Always a gift. And I know each woman here will have received that gift fully too. Elsie, where can they find out more about you if they'd like to?
You can go to my website, which is www.3phd.net.
Lovely. Oh, I love that you've got a PhD. An uneducated homemaker with a PhD.
3 of them, Grace.
Love it.
considering a name for my company. I finally came to, upon reflection, 3 principles for human development. And then it dawned on me that the acronym was 3 PhD. And I thought, whoa, I only completed grade 12 in Canada, the first in my family to do that. And now 3 PhD. Go get them, ladies. Go get them.
Thank you, Elsie. Lovely, lovely, lovely.
All right. I'll click off now.
Sure, go ahead. Thank you. And thank you all for being here as well. It's been lovely to see you show up here and to just have your presence, ladies. I hope you've enjoyed it. And if you want to find out more about Elsie, and I'm sure you're on my list at this stage, you will get that email. And of course, you can visit me at any time on citygirlconfidence.com. I wish you a beautiful rest of this International Women's Day. I personally am off now to, first have my mentoring session with Elsie and then off to a dinner with ladies here in my local town in southern Italy for a soiree. So whatever you're doing, have a lovely time. Lots of love to you and thank you for being here. Ciao.